in the closet kitchen, it's Valentine's Day. Either love it or hate it. It's just another day. It's a very commercial day, but if you want to make it an even better day, I'm going to be showing you today how to make my very own recipe, chocolate cupcakes with chocolate icing. If you've never baked before and you're nervous about it, I can totally understand. Today I can show you basic tips to make this a disaster-proof process for you. Let's get going. You want to start by turning on your oven to 350 degrees. The next thing that you want to do is prepare your baking pans. Muffin tin or your cupcake tin, prepare them. This recipe makes 18 to 24, depending on how you put the batter into the tins. I actually don't use cupcake liners. It's just a wasteful product. I'm a little bit old school, so I just lightly butter the pan, and then I put a little bit of flour in it, and I tap it out. And I'm going to show you how I do that. Glove, because this is where we keep our butter. I put a little bit of butter in there. Okay. Use your fingers. Coat those sides. Really get in there. This is nicely buttered. I'm going to take off this glove because I don't need that anymore. Take my flour. Put a little bit. Oops. If you put a whole bunch in, that's fine too. Tap it around. I recommend doing this over a sink. Give the pan a few light slams. Now we have a lightly floured pan. Let's get going to mixing our dry ingredients with our wet ingredients. Flour, 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I have sifted this. 2 cups of sugar. Sugar's great. Unsweetened cocoa powder, 3/4 of a cup. In this glass dish, I have 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt. And then the brown stuff here, this is actually my secret ingredient that I'm telling you, so it's not a secret anymore. A punch of flavor, a flavor bomb, 1 teaspoon espresso powder. You can find it in your grocery stores. It's found in the section where coffee and tea and stuff is. It really heightens the flavor of the chocolate. Much like salt activates the flavors in any kind of food that you pair with it, espresso powder does that to chocolate. Really enhances this recipe. Those are the dry ingredients. I like to mix my wet ingredients in a container like this. I just like how easy it is to pour the wet ingredients into the bowl of dry ingredients. In this cup, I have 1 cup of milk, 1/2 a cup of vegetable oil, 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. You can buy the artificial vanilla. There's nothing wrong with that either. It still has a lovely flavor to it. I would just put in 2 teaspoons of that. 2 eggs. If you are nervous about cracking eggs into this big thing and you don't think you can do it, of course you can. I just use this little ramekin. You can use a bowl, whatever you want. And I'm just going to crack the egg. This just prevents shells from getting into your larger mass of wet product. If you are nervous about getting those pesky little eggshells into your liquid and you're picking them out, I'm going to add my cup of boiled water. Ooh. Whisk the eggs and everything up together. Prevents me from over mixing the cake batter once everything's combined. This is a cake batter that you really don't want to over mix. You don't really want to over activate the baking soda and the baking powder and the salt. What could happen is it could either go quite flat when it's baking, or it can go much too large and spill over your pans. I give myself 2 minutes. I don't go over 2 minutes of mixing. You do not want to overmix this batter. You can mix this to your heart's content, just not the 2 together, the wet with the dry. Ready to mix everything together. It's also a great idea. Dump everything back through the sifter. You don't really want clumps of anything in your batter. Everything is going to go through the sifter. You see, there's these little clumpy things. You don't want that kind of stuff in there. Mash it in. You can just make a little well. Just dump it in. You can just dump the whole thing in. That's fine. It's 12:35, so 12:37. I can't be mixing this anymore because I don't want to overmix this. I do have a kitchen mixer and handheld beaters, but I wanted to show you that you don't need any of that stuff. You can just do this. You don't need fancy machinery. You don't need anything. You don't need anything fancy. My 2 minutes is up. This is well mixed. I don't feel anything scraping on the bottom of the bowl, so we're good to go. I like to use a soup ladle to ladle the cupcake batter. Pretty like soupy kind of a batter. You don't want to fill them all the way up. You never do actually with anything like this. Halfway to 3/4 is fine. Right about there is a great place to be. 3/4 full. Also a great idea to just clean the pan up just a little bit. If you spilt some, that's fine. I was also sure before I turn the oven on to make sure the pan is in the right position. And that position is the 3rd shelf down, typically, is where that shelf will sit. So we're gonna set our timer. Another thing about baking that is interesting is the bake times. The bake times, they do differ. Ovens are all different. 15 to 18 minutes should be when these cupcakes bake. What you want to check for is when you touch the top of them, it'll just give you a nice firm kind of a bounce. It won't be jiggly and wet inside still. It'll just have a nice little bit of resistance. You can see your fingerprint, but then it goes back up again. The toothpick test. So I have my toothpick out. I'll show you how to do as well. The butter for the icing is starting to melt a little bit. You can also microwave your butter. A lot of bakers will say, don't do that. It's the worst thing you can do. Who cares? You can do that as well. But if you do microwave this to soften it a little bit, don't put it in the microwave for very long. 6-10 seconds for this 1.5 cups of butter. Or you can just fork it. So just fork it. You can break it up a little bit and then it'll melt a little bit easier, because instead of using the kitchen mixer, which I would normally do because it makes it nice and light, I'm going to show you how to do it just by hand, and it'll be just as good. Oven mitt. All right. Enough of you. And I can do a toothpick test here. Pull it out and it's clean. So those are cooked. I'm gonna let these cool in the pans for a couple minutes. Then I'm gonna tip them over and let them cool in the cooling rack. Dump it out. So oh, one went there. That's fine. Second batch of cupcakes finished baking. I only got 22 cupcakes out of the 24, just because I filled a couple of them up too much. You might do that too. That's fine. I'm going to start mixing up the icing. If you bring your butter up to really nice consistency like this, it's really easy to work with, and I recommend doing that. Otherwise, you'll be really working really hard. You'll get a really grainy kind of texture. You do not want that. You want it to be velvety smooth. This icing contains 1.5 cups of butter. I always use salted butter because I find it tastes a lot better. I absolutely love butter. I could eat it by itself. You can use unsalted butter, of course. A lot of people do. You don't want the added salt. I completely understand that. But you need flavor. If you're going to not use salted butter, I recommend putting in 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. So you can do that if you want. It really is going to heighten that chocolate flavor. In this cup here, I have 1/2 cup of milk. And in that 1/2 cup of milk, I also have a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. In this bowl of dry goods, I have 1 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, 4 cups icing sugar or confectioner's sugar, white powdery stuff. I have a half of a teaspoon of the espresso powder. What we're gonna do, I always eat butter. I like to use a whisk for this. One of these things, a little spatula things, a little silicone thing. The sifted dry ingredients. So you can just add little by little to this 1.5 cups of butter. So I'm gonna start. I like using large bowls for this. You don't make a big mess everywhere. So start mixing. I'm gonna add just a little bit at a time to get these ingredients mixed together. More of the dry mix to the butter and a little bit of the milk. It's really easy to make your own really tasty icing. This isn't too sweet, and it is certainly very chocolatey. We're all mixed up. Look how delicious that looks. Smooth. It's so creamy. A thing of beauty. The cupcakes have cooled. It took about an hour for them to be totally cool to the touch. My decoration, glucose, fructose, little jelly hearts. I'll be adorning the top of each little cupcake with this beautifully mixed up icing that we are going to put in this pastry bag. So you can get these at any like specialty kitchen store, craft store, and a whole assortment of different stores. You can use a coupon or get them on sale often just for a few bucks. These are completely reusable, so I highly recommend investing a couple dollars into a pastry bag. And you can also get these different little piping nozzles to go along with it. You just put the attachment you want. I will be using a relatively large one with these little serrated spokes. It's just going to add a nice little ribbed effect when I pipe the icing. You just slide it into the bag, goes out the other side. It can be really hard to not make a mess of your bag, your piping bag, trying to put your icing in. So what I did was I looked around and I found this thermos in the cupboard. It's just the right height for me to put the bag in. This will stand up on its own while I scoop the icing in. So look around your kitchen. Use what you have without getting your hands and your bag in a huge, buttery, greasy mess. If your icing is a little runny, if you microwaved your butter too much, for instance, and it's a little too soupy, put it in the fridge for anywhere from half an hour up to an hour. Maybe you don't want it to get too stiff in the fridge because it'll make piping a lot more difficult for you. You'll have to really put a lot of pressure in there to squish it out the other side. Doesn't get much neater than that. You can decorate these cupcakes however you like. Any sort of candy, any sort of chocolate. You could do a little heart-shaped chocolate. I don't really care so much about the accessorizing of baked goods, just for the fact that I'm not really into the artificial colors, all the stuff that I can't pronounce. They're not really that tasty. I'm not that great at decorating. I just wanted to show you how I did that. You can have fun with this. We have this thermos. It also makes a great holder for it while you're not using it. These cupcakes are really beautiful, I think. It celebrates chocolate with just a little hint of color and the heart reference. Cupcake piping bag. Swirl it around. A heart. I'm gonna do a little squirt. You just press it down and release. I'll do a big one. Look at that. Whoa. And then I'll do little ones going around. Just take your time. Don't worry about, perfection. There's no such thing. Squish this one down a little bit. Look at that. I'll squish this down. There's a simple one. I hope you can share this recipe and these cupcakes with someone you love, or with people you like, or just tolerate. Happy Valentine's Day. See you again soon.